The subcommittee will come to order. Without objection, the chair may declare a recess at any time.
And off a different coast, U.S. Navy personnel, again, in a swarm of unmanned aerial systems, and again through night vision goggles and an SLR camera, recorded this image. But this time, other U.S. Navy assets also observed unmanned aerial systems nearby. And we're now reasonably confident that these triangles correlate to unmanned aerial systems in the area. The triangular appearance is a result of light passing through the night vision goggles and then being recorded by an SLR camera. Now, I don't mean to suggest that everything that we observe is identifiable, but this is a great example of how it takes considerable effort to understand what we're seeing in the examples that we are able to collect. In this example, we accumulated sufficient data from two similar encounters from two different time periods in two different geographic areas to help us draw these conclusions. That's not always the case, though. We recognize that that can be unsatisfying or insufficient in the eyes of many. This is a popular topic in our nation, with various theories as to what these objects may be and where they originate. By nature, we are all curious and we seek to understand the unknown. And as a lifelong intelligence professional, I'm impatient. I want immediate explanations for this as much as anyone else. However, understanding can take significant time and effort. It's why we've endeavored to concentrate on this data-driven process to derive fact-based results. And given the nature of our business, national defense, we've had to sometimes be less forthcoming with information in open forums than many would hope. If UAP do indeed represent a potential threat to our security, then the capabilities, systems, processes, and sources we use to observe, record, study, or analyze these phenomena need to be classified at appropriate levels. We do not want potential adversaries to know exactly what we're able to see or understand, or how we come to the conclusions we make. Therefore, public disclosures must be carefully considered on a case-by-case basis. So what's next? We're concentrating on a seamless transition to the new organization, and future analysis of complicated issues of UAP issues will greatly benefit from the infrastructure, the process, and the procedures that we've developed to date. I'm confident that the task force under Navy leadership has forged a path forward that will allow us to anchor assessments in science and engineering via anecdotal evidence. We remain committed to that goal, as I know the USDI organization does as well. So thank you very much for your interest and continuing support for the UAP Task Force. The team's made a lot of progress, but we really are just establishing the foundation for the more detailed analysis that's yet to be done. And with your continued support, we can sustain that momentum necessary to produce data-centric analysis and understanding of the phenomena. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bray. This is the third version of this task force, and to be frank, one of Congress's concerns is that the executive branch in administration from both parties has been sweeping concerns about UAPs under the rug by focusing on events that can be explained and avoiding events that cannot be explained. What can you say to give the American people confidence that you aren't just focusing our attention on low-hanging fruit with easy explanations?
Congressman, I'll start, and then Mr. Bray, please feel free to weigh in. So the way that we're approaching this is with a more thorough, standardized methodology than what we have in the past. First and foremost, the Secretary of Defense is chartering this effort. This is not someone lower in the Department of Defense. And he has assigned that task to the Office of Secretary of Defense, the Undersecretary for Intelligence and Security, that's me, because I'm responsible for looking at intelligence matters, I'm responsible for security matters. This is potentially both. So when you start concerning ourselves with the safety of our personnel, the safety of our installations and bases, there's no other higher priority than what we have than actually getting after this. And as you have stated, we have been assigned that task to actually stand up an office, the AIM-SOG, which I believe the name, sir, will likely change. But we have moved forward in terms of moving to establish that office. We have, as of this week, picked a director for that effort, a very established and accomplished individual. We've identified spaces. We've worked with personnel across the Department of Defense, with the services, and we've worked with the IC, which is on board in helping us work through this standardized methodology for now, bringing in data, analyzing that data, and reporting that data in the appropriate method and appropriate means so we can either get it to our service personnel to ensure their safety, or get it to you and the Congress and to the public to ensure that you have oversight to what we're doing. So, chartered by the Secretary of Defense, standardized, and really a methodical approach. It's something that we're doing that has not been done before.
Can we get some kinds of assurances that your analysts will follow the facts where they lead and assess all hypotheses?
Absolutely. So we're open to all hypotheses. We're open to any conclusions that we may encounter.
Quickly, before I pass it to the ranking member and Chairman Schiff, I want to thank you both for taking the time, and I had a good time meeting with you last week, Director Moultrie, Undersecretary Moultrie. It's fair to say that you are a science fiction fan, is that correct?
It is fair to say that I am an inquisitive mind who has spent 40 years in the intelligence field and has focused on both science and science fiction. That is fair.
Could you tell us about it?
Yeah, well, look, my generation grew up looking at space sagas and the Apollo program. So all of us who grew up in the 60s were just thrilled by watching our first astronaut land on the moon. That was a momentous occasion to people who were of different generations. Some of them didn't believe that it happened. I still have relatives and friends who don't believe it happened, right? Science fiction to them. But to us, it was, no, that's the progress that we've made. And so I was enthralled by that, and I've taken that to heart. I enjoy the challenge of what may be out there. I have mentioned to you that, yes, I have followed science fiction. I have gone to conventions, even. I'll say it on the record. Got to break the ice somehow. But, you know, I have done that, right? But there's nothing wrong with that. Don't necessarily dress up, but I do, you know, I do believe that it's important to show that the Department of Defense has, you know, we have character. And we're people just like you, just like the American people. We have our inquisitiveness. We have our questions. We want to know what's out there as much as you want to know what's out there. We get the questions not just from you, we get it from family members. And we get them night and day, not just in committee hearings. So finding what's out there is important, but first and foremost, it's important for us to do that so that we can ensure that our people, our personnel, our aviators, our bases and installations are safe. And then that curiosity factor is something else that we just want to know, because that's the human race. It's just, you know, that insatiable desire to know.
Thank you, sir. Ranking Member Crawford.
Mr. Moultrie, you said you don't necessarily dress up. That wasn't a real strong statement. Gentlemen, thank you for being here today. We appreciate it. And thank you, Mr. Moultrie, for breaking the ice the way you did. Appreciate that. The inability to understand objects in our sensitive operating areas is tantamount to an intelligence failure that we certainly want to avoid. This is not about finding alien spacecraft, but about delivering dominant intelligence across the tactical, operational, and strategic spectrum. So my question is, how can AIM-SOG lead to prevention of intelligence surprises?
Sure, I'll start with that. So the goal of our effort is to integrate it into what we already do on a normal basis, which is look for the unknowns, Congressman, as you stated in your opening remarks, across all domains. So we've been doing this for decades. We've been looking at the space domain, looking at space objects, looking at space weather, looking at space phenomenon. We've been looking at things in the air domain, and we, as you know, and I'll talk more about this in classified session, but we have a very concerted effort to understand adversarial platforms and adversarial developmental programs. And we do that also in the ground domain. And of course, we're very interested in what happens in the underwater or sea domain, if you will, subsurface domain. So if there are objects that our aviators or air crews are encountering in this air domain, and their sensors are discovering or detecting some of these objects, we want to just bring that in to the normal process that we have for identifying unknown unknowns. We want to make sure we have the intelligence requirements that allow us not only to look at that event from the time that it occurs forward, but maybe retrospectively, we want to go back and see if we can get to the left of that event to say, was there some developmental program that we, to get to your technical surprise issue, sir, that we should have known about? And if so, how do we put that intelligence requirement in place to ensure that we are following an adversarial development or any other development that may be out there? So that's what we want to do in terms of normalizing this and bringing it into the normal process of how we identify unknown unknowns.
So you mentioned fidelity, and I think it's important to talk about the relationship from the Navy as the lead agency on this. How do you interact with Space Force, Air Force, to create that degree of fidelity? We're talking about sensors and so on, and I guess where I have some concerns that many of the images that we see commonly in this committee and even in open source, the resolution and the clarity that would allow a robust technical intelligence analysis is challenging. So is AIMSOG prepared to address the quality and quantity of data collected on UAP to advance intelligence collection? And do you have the adequate sensors you need to collect that high-quality data?
One of the lines of effort that we have is looking at our sensor capabilities and to understand whether or not, as the video showed that Mr. Bray displayed, sometimes it's very fleeting data that we have on some of these objects. And we want to make sure that, one, our systems are calibrated to actually be able to collect on the objects. You know, our sensors today they're calibrated for specific things. We want to make sure they're calibrated for things of this nature, things of this size, things of this velocity, if I can use that term. We want to make sure that once we have that data is stored in some standardized method that we can then extract and that we can feed into our system real time. So we do not want this to take some prolonged period of time for us to get that data. But our goal is absolutely to have that high fidelity information that we get from all sensors, and we want to be able to integrate that with what we may have off of ground-based sensors. So whatever we may have on a platform, whatever we may have on the ground, whatever we may have from other sensors that we may have in different domains, we want to be able to integrate that all and get this integrated picture as we would, as I said, with any other unidentified objects or things that we are tracking as a part of our normal intelligence responsibilities.
Thank you. Last question, Mr. Bray, if you would. I'm a Navy pilot. I've encountered a UAP. Walk me through the reporting protocol once I see something that I think needs reported.
The first thing that aviator would do after landing as a part of their normal debriefing is they would contact their intelligence officer. Their intelligence officer would then walk them through first filing actually data preservation to ensure that whatever sensor data may be on the aircraft, that we preserve that so that it's available for later analysis. Second, they would actually fill out a form that includes details like where they were operating, altitudes they were operating, speeds, what they observed, whatever sensor data they may have recorded from that. And then that report is filed. It goes two places. One, it goes through the operational chain of command so that operational units are aware of what's being observed, and also through the UAP task force so that they can take that data, database it, and quite often have individuals from the task force contact the aviator and ask them additional questions if there were things that weren't clear in the report. That then goes into a database where we begin to compare it with other observations that we have, again, comparing for locations, comparing for altitude, speeds, shapes, if any RF emissions were detected from the platform, all of that so that we can try to reach some conclusions on that.
Thank you. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chairman Schiff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bray, can you rerun that first image that looked like it was outside of a plane window? And if you wouldn't mind going up to the screen and tell us what we're seeing. Not that you can necessarily tell us what we're seeing, but
right.
Explain what we should be looking at in that first image.
Absolutely. And Alexi, what I'll ask is if you can stop it at a certain point.
And are we looking outside of a civilian aircraft window? Is that what we're looking at?
You're looking outside a U.S. Navy F-18.
Okay.
And it's great, shows how difficult the analysis is. Go to school farther forward. As you can see, finding UAP is harder than you may think. What you'll find eventually on this, when we find the right frame, is for literally about one frame here is a spherical object that passes right through here, passes right through there because the aircraft is moving pretty fast in this direction, fly by of it. And it is a,
Is that it right there?
that's not it. That is it. There we go, off in the distance.
Can you point to the screen again what we're supposed to be looking at?
Is right.
Okay, if you could stop that frame.
That's not the one.
No, that's not the one.
Alexei, just push play. Let's see if. Here's what you'll see coming up right here is there it went. Now back up just a spherical object right here. It zooms by the window right in this area right there. There we go. Could you see that part right there again going by? I think we're having a hard time stopping it in the right spot.
Okay.
So as you can see, it's difficult, and I think a part of the issue here is the laptop we're working with is not as easy for stopping that video in the right spot.
We'll describe what we have seen in that. What are we observing?
What you see here is aircraft that is operating in a U.S. Navy training range that has observed spherical object in that area, and as they fly by it, they take a video. You see it looks reflective in this video, somewhat reflective, and it quickly passes by the cockpit of the aircraft.
And is this one of the phenomena that we can't explain?
I do not have an explanation for what this specific object is.
And is this